Merci beaucoup, mesdames.
Thank you very much, distinguished chairs, heads of state and government, ministers, ambassadors, all protocols observed. I will try to get to the brass tacks as quickly as possible, because here we all know full well why we're gathered here today. Almost 10 years ago, the Paris Agreement set our common objectives, underpinned by science, and I'll get to that later. Across all latitudes of our planet, we see that the consequences of climate change are self-evident, and this is all the more clearer today, 10 years on. France, since 2017, has been complying with its carbon budget, and we're living up to our obligations. We're going to continue doing that. You can count on our economy, you can count on our country. My second takeaway is that we must also rise to the occasion at the end of 2025. We know that there are going to be a number of objectives which we must meet at the COP30 in Belém, and that's very important. And I'd like to express our support to President Lula, all of the negotiators. You have our support. Let's keep it simple. Europeans will be there in Belém living up to expectations, and France will be defending that meeting. We'll be going down our 2050 carbon neutral climate path. We'll be submitting our nationally determined contribution, our NDCs, underpinned by science, bringing together private and public investment in accordance with the trajectory we've set. And on that note, France supports the establishment of interstate carbon credits, which will be a way of going further, as well as other mechanisms which will allow us to assist our industries as they undergo this transition, making them able to get there. That's what we'll be submitting before the end of the year, by November in Belém at the COP30. Aside from the NDCs, I wanted to talk about some of the key goals coming up in the next few months against this context. Progressive phase-out of fossil energies. This is something we decided on in Dubai. This is absolutely vital, and that's why we need to accelerate our efforts, moving away from carbon in particular. We need to think about previous COPs as we look ahead to the future. So we've established mechanisms to fund this transition, to address the issue of investments that were recently made, so that no one says it'll be a good idea to reopen up carbon-heavy industries. Instead of doing that, instead of backsliding, we need to accelerate the transition. This was said by a previous speaker. We need binding objectives on methane. We know that this is a reachable goal, and we participate. We are participating in the Global Methane Pledge, bringing together 150 countries. I encourage those who haven't yet done so to join our ranks. This is the best way to reduce our emissions, and it's also a G7 priority. We'll be chairing the G7 next year. My third takeaway I wanted to underscore is ecosystem restoration. We know, thanks to the work of the IPCC and IPBES, that there are deep synergies between our fight to limit CO2 emissions and the fight for biodiversity. They're mutually reinforcing. Therefore, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, but that's why we need to forcefully fight to protect our oceans and our primary forests, because these two fights are part and parcel of our efforts to protect biodiversity. 3/4 of the world's biodiversity are located in those primeval forests. We have a lot of biodiversity, a wealth of biodiversity in our oceans. So if we protect those primeval forests and oceans, they're remarkable carbon sinks, in particular those contained in our primeval forests. So we're going to continue taking action on forests. The Belém meeting will be important, as we will be hoisting up our commitment to the Amazon. France is one of the countries of the Amazon. We have French Guiana, which is located in the Amazon. So we'll be proposing new financing mechanisms so as to further protect the Amazon. Now, we shouldn't forget about Southeast Asia and the Pacific. Think about what's happening in the PNG, in Papua New Guinea. and Africa as well. There are forests there. That's a key objective. Therefore, everything we're going to be deploying, those country packages, are absolutely vital if we are to help preserve these forests. We are putting so much money into reforestation, but we also need to preserve existing forests. We're not doing that enough. We need those countries which have those forests. They might be losing out on economic opportunities by keeping these forests in the ground. So we need for the international community to help those countries. We also want to mention the Nice conference. An enormous collective effort was undertaken. I'd like to thank the UN, all of our partners, something that was spearheaded by us and our friends Costa Rica. We exceeded the 60% ratification threshold for the BBNG treaty. So great progress, but we need to strengthen collective work, protect the high seas. Thanks to the BBNG, we're now going to be working on implementation of that. The 3030 Montreal objective, exclusive economic areas, protecting them. And I'd also like to invite you, in so much as possible, to join the deep-sea mining moratorium. That's absolutely essential if we are to preserve biodiversity. So we need to revitalize our efforts to protect oceans and forests. Also, the fight for financing, an important endeavor for Belém as well. The EU is taking action. We are the world's top donor. 28 billion euros were pledged. That's a quarter of the world's climate finance. France, together with the French Development Agency, is mobilizing 7 billion euros for climate action. We've tripled our commitment over the last decade. Will continue to mobilize on international finance. Last but not least, aside from all these timelines, all of this action, what we want to be doing at Belém, the NDCs, and what I just mentioned, we must also continue this method, implementing this method, bringing everyone together, bringing together scientists, governments, companies, and NGOs. This method, part and parcel of it, is the Pact for People and Prosperity, the 4 Ps, which brings together 73 states and has come up with the innovative initiatives thanks to this mobilization. I'll just mention a few. Kenya, Barbados, Spain, Somalia, Sierra Leone, Antigua and Barbuda. The list goes on. Many countries have committed to improvements in aviation, resilience, innovative financing. That's what it's called. We need to continue forging coalitions to mobilize innovative financing. With the UK, we've created a framework for biodiversity credits and essential mechanisms to achieve what I just mentioned on forests. Pilot projects have already been crafted. We have robust methodology so that we don't repeat the mistakes of the past with carbon credits. We also need to further take into consideration climate vulnerability when allocating development bank financing, and that's the 4P reforming the big banks. To achieve this, we need to keep in mind a few simple principles. No country should have to choose between combating poverty and protecting the planet. Every country should be able to choose their own path. We need to increase funding funneled to the most vulnerable countries. It's a matter of justice, and it's these countries which are suffering the most from climate change. We need to mobilize private finance a lot more. That's at the heart of the World Bank and the IMF reforms. This is necessary to ensure we achieve this transition. And last but not least, science should be at the heart of our policies, of the decisions we take. Sometimes we hear narratives to the effect that climate issues, biodiversity, are up for debate. Some people say the science is not clear-cut, but I do believe the science is clear. Recognized scientists, eminent scientists, harbor no doubts. We defend open, free science so that we can underpin our decisions with that science. And that is why 800 IPCC scientists will be meeting later this year to continue driving ahead this agenda here at the United Nations so that we make good decisions. Thank you very much for your collective efforts. I thank you.